Welcome to the Practical Dreamers podcast, where your dreams and finances collide. I'm Charm,
And I'm Dara.
and we're your guides on this journey to the financial freedom. And today, Dara, what are we going to talk about?
So today we are talking about that age-old question of whether or not to rent or buy. Depending on where you are in your journey, you might be looking at these choices, and we're here to help you guys figure that out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think before we dive in, let's share with our listeners some pros and cons of renting versus buying. And we'll
Yes.
do this by, Dara, you share the pros and I'll share the cons.
Sounds good to me.
Perfect.
All right. So first up, we're going to talk about the home buying, okay, and the pros of home buying. So equity building. This is the first thing that comes to mind when I think of buying a home. When you're making those payments on your mortgage, it's actually going towards your asset, your home, okay? Part of your net worth. So that's one thing that I would say.
Absolutely. And for you renters out there, unfortunately, you don't have the ability to build equity. So unfortunately, we get a 0 in this column.
Yeah, you do. But as far as control and personalization, well, we still get that one too. We get to do most of the things we want to with our homes. We can plant a garden if we want to, unless you have an HOA. I mean, that gets a little dicey, but we're not even going to get into that. But you get to customize your space. You can paint the walls whatever color you want, the outside. You have a lot of things that you can do with your home. So you do have that.
Understood. Well, great point, Dira. However, I will say, although renters don't have the options to do a lot of the customization that most homeowners would, I will say there are other options for them. There have been plenty of things out there nowadays where you can do renter-friendly, customizable things to your home. So that
Yep.
will allow you to change the color of your walls by either putting up I forget what the name of
The
that stuff is.
contact paper.
Thank you. The contact
Yeah.
paper, putting up some contact paper, even doing that for your countertops. So it actually allows you to do some things now. Like you're actually able to do a lot more things nowadays than you were before. So I would say this is a tie.
All right, I'll give you that one. I could say that's valid. That's valid because you got the command strips, all those things.
Hmm.
Lots of strides have been made in that, but as a homeowner, you don't have to worry about that. Um, so moving right along, the tax benefits. So homeowners may actually benefit from some tax deductions that, unfortunately, apartment renters don't. So yeah, there's
Don't
that.
steal my thunder.
I'm sorry.
But she's right.
Going to
Renters,
Thunder Girl.
renters, we don't have the ability for any tax advantages renting.
Right. And then finally, stability and security. So when you get a mortgage, usually, depending on what kind of mortgage you have, which we're not even going to get into that, but usually your mortgage is at a set rate if you get a fixed mortgage, and therefore you know what you're paying every single month. So that makes it more stable for a living situation because you can plan years into the future. And then also just the security of knowing you have a home to come to every day as long as you pay that mortgage.
Absolutely. Well, for renters, I will say this is a little dicey for us because if you are living under a landlord, then they have the ability to not only sell the home that you're living in right from under you, hopefully with proper notice, but unfortunately, you don't have that security, needless to say. You will have to move if the landlord decides to sell the home and or do whatever they would like with the property that you're living in. So, okay, homeowners, you win.
Thank you.
Hmm.
All right. So moving right along, now we're going to talk about the pros of renting. I'm going to go into that now. I'm switching over teams. I'm now team rental. So lower monthly costs. Okay. So instead of paying that mortgage that includes both the mortgage as well as the taxes that are attached to it, you're just paying a monthly fee that you've agreed upon during your rental agreement. So this allows for extra money.
Understood. And on the homeowner side, I would say could be a con for some of you who are not planning to spend as much as you might on buying a home because there are high costs there. Those costs could essentially be upfront, now like your down payment, closing costs, and ultimately making sure that you have the maintenance fees or emergency fund to cover those maintenance fees in the future.
Yes. All right. And then if I want to say goodbye to this place in 6 months, I can say deuces, I'm moving on, because rentals, you have a lot more flexibility than a homeowner does. You can move across the country or whatever. There's different types of rental agreements. So you can agree to a month to as long as some situations 2 years, who knows? But the possibilities are endless.
That is true. Now, when it comes to buying a home, that's why you want to know that you are committed to being in the area that you're in. So you want to be a lot more selective when you're purchasing a home versus clearly renting. You have a lot more freedom in renting to do what you please, but with home buying, you want to make sure that you're secure in your decision.
Yes. And then, all right, well, the fridge broke, the oven stopped working. Hey, landlord, can you come and figure this out for me? It's a hands-free, no maintenance burden when it comes to renting. You just have to make a phone call. That's about it. So it's all built into your price that you're paying monthly. What about homeowners?
Well, with homeowners, I can call contractors. So, so needless to say, with home ownership, you are responsible for anything that breaks. When it breaks, if it break, it will break. Just needless, it will break. Um, but you're responsible. You have to make sure that you not only have the funds, but you are available to the contractors that you probably are going to be unfortunate slave to for however long they make you. I heard some stories with these contractors
Oh,
nowadays.
yeah,
So
definitely.
but yes, but that is definitely one that I would say renters have a lot more autonomy on. They have the ability to just call the landlord. What's the saying? Not my circus, not my monkey. Yes, they have that
Yeah.
option. Unfortunately, us homeowners, we do not.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, investment diversification. So by renting, you're able to invest your money into different stocks and things like that and other retirement income, stuff along those lines, because you're paying less in rentals. But I mean, what about owning a home? What would you say this falls under?
For owning a home, I mean, ideally, we're able to invest in our equity. So we're actually diversifying our portfolio by building wealth because now we have a property that we're owning. And by paying a mortgage, as you elaborated on earlier, we're actually investing in ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately in our home, in our future.
Oh yeah. So I definitely think that one ties because it's nothing like having an asset that you're building wealth towards, and you can actually do both at the same time if your mortgage is affordable. I kind of flip-flop there. But yeah.
I've seen a lot of that in this episode right now. So
I'm a woman and I can change my mind. Um
understood, understood. Well, now that we've actually explained the pros and the cons of buying versus renting, let's share some of our own personal beliefs and experiences with this. Go ahead,
Oh
dear.
yeah, gladly. So my personal experience is I kind of did a rent to buy situation, which actually worked out really cool. We got to see the good thing about this was we got to see the inside of the home for a good 2 years prior to buying. So even though our rental income, in a sense, wasn't going towards our own equity, we knew like all the nooks and crannies of the home. We knew what needed to be fixed or what wasn't desirable, what we were willing to compromise on, stuff like that, that you don't always are you're not privy to in a situation where you're just buying a home. You kind of do a walkthrough, whatever, whatever. So this was nice. And then there's zero regret in my home buying experience. I'm glad we bought our home. It's kept our expenses low and kept it consistent, especially with the rockiness through like 2020 to now. Actually, house prices are still kind of insane. But that would be my experience. I thought it was great. So yeah. What about you, Charm?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, I actually was a renter for a very, very long time. It's only recently that my husband and I bought our home. So I'm new to this home ownership arena here. But as far as renting, I mean, I personally enjoyed it. One thing I think it's important to realize or understand for yourself is that you're making a decision that is sound for you. And for me personally, when I was renting, I was very career driven at the time. And not to say I'm not now, however, more so then, where I wanted to leave room for the opportunity for me to move around freely and as much as I needed to. And renting gave me that flexibility. I mean, I was on the East Coast, so I went from Jersey to DC to, all these other places. And it allowed me the freedom to do that. I couldn't imagine if I was a homeowner at that point how tough that would have been on my choices or how frantic I would have been when I got the job offers that I've gotten. And I'm like, oh my goodness, now I got to sell my home. And what does that look like? So I
Mhm.
appreciated that I had that flexibility when it came to renting. Now, also with renting, I appreciated too that I've had some awful, I mean, excuse me, not even awful, awesome. That's the word I was looking for. Some awesome landlords. Sorry, landlords, if you're listening out there. You were awesome. But I had some awesome landlords out there that honestly were great. I mean, I don't think, thankfully, I didn't experience a lot of the inflation as it comes to rent increases, things of that nature. As my landlord had told me, I was a great tenant. Therefore, they didn't feel the need to raise my rent. I took care of the property. So, for any of you renters out there, here's some tips for you on making sure that you are a great tenant. You're not nagging. You're not doing anything that is going to clearly possibly make your landlord think come that year, I should raise this $100 so they can get their butts out of here. Like, I don't know. Um, but needless to say, that was definitely a great experience. And if I may add too, dear, what do you think as far as societal pressures? I think there are societal pressures
Oh yeah,
when it comes down
100%.
to renting versus buying.
Yeah, it's kind of looked as if, everybody's trying to live this American dream, quote unquote, which includes that white picket fence house. And, you have to own in order to be doing something that is worthwhile. And that's not the case. Everybody's situation is different. Like you were saying, you were career driven. You knew you would be moving around and making choices at the drop of a dime. This allowed you to do that. Had you not, you might not have been as successful as you have been. So
Hmm.
I agree. It's not a one size fits all thing. And I think it's kind of sucks when people are like, shaming people for not buying a home. Like,
Absolutely.
let people live. Okay.
So true, so true. I mean, I honestly believe I felt victim of that too. Especially after you hit a certain age when everyone's hovering around that 30. You're like, oh, you don't have a home yet? I've heard the story, oh, I brought my home when I was 19 years old so you do feel that pressure from other individuals of like, well, am I running behind? Should I have purchased a home already? Like, so I agree with
Mhm.
you. It's definitely about making sure that you're staying in alignment with your own self, your own values, and prioritizing your own needs when it comes to making
Right.
this choice because it's not one that should to be taken lightly.
No,
Um,
not at all.
you know,
Even,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, even like think about even in the arena of buying a home in itself, right? People tend to want certain things as well. So say leave the rental part out of it and you're just looking at a home. Now you're house poor because you're trying to keep up with everybody around you and trying to get the biggest, the best and show off and all that kind of stuff. I think that too is a societal pressure as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Clearly, you were very adamant. That's why I didn't want to get in your way. So,
On a roll, on a
you
roll.
sure were. Well, one thing I will add too, and this is just personal. The reason I did wait a long time to purchase a home, and I shouldn't say wait a long time, but the reason I chose to wait is because I personally wanted to do that experience or have that experience with my husband. And that was a
Mm,
personal choice of mine. And I thought that that was important for me because and honestly, it worked out because I couldn't imagine. Could you imagine if I did have a home and the decision I would have to make? I was already, when I got engaged, everyone listening, but when I got engaged, I was in the midst of trying to figure out work. What am I going to do here? Because my
mm,
fiance now lived all the way across the nation, just moved across the nation. And I'm like, oh, but I work on the East Coast. Like, what's going to happen here? And so trying to figure out work and trying to figure out how this is going to, work if we stayed long distance for some time. I couldn't imagine bringing in a house in that. Oh, I'm going to have to figure out how to sell this. Do I keep it? Do I not? So
yeah, that would have been a lot.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
My hair was already turning gray from that stress. I didn't need that added on to it. So I commend anyone that is out there and has that choice. I commend you for whatever choice you decide to do or see that through, how you see that through, I should say.
Right, definitely. Okay, okay. Okay, so now why don't we give some tips on what you guys can do in order to see if renting is the right choice for you versus buying a home?
Absolutely. Yes, there. That's a great idea. We definitely want to give our listeners the best decisions on what they can do when it comes to renting or buying. All
Mhm.
right. Well, would you like to start?
Sure. So, one of the biggest things, obviously, is money. In order to figure out if you can afford a home or if you should rent, income is coming into play, right? So, you need to know how much you're working with, what you can actually afford. Remember, we talked about the house poor thing. Don't want that to be you. Um, and then you want to look at what you have saved for this home because there's a lot of costs that come with it, as we were talking about before.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Dira. And to add, I definitely think it's important for you to use online tools. There are plenty out there. Some
Mhm.
of my favorites involve, looking at calculators that will show you if you're able to afford, buying versus renting. So I will link some of those calculators below in the description box. In addition to that, I think it's also important that you look into your own market and where you live. As I shared earlier, I lived in the DC area at one point, and as many of you may know, it's a very expensive area. So determining whether I should buy or rent when I was there was a big decision for me at the time. This is before, of course, my fiance. However, it came out that when I actually looked into it, it made sense to rent. I mean, the
Mhm.
DC, Northern Virginia market it's very expensive, I should say. I shouldn't say too, but very expensive. So renting was a better option for me at that time.
Mhm. And then, like you said earlier, your long-term not girls, long-term goals. My goodness. Anyway, so yeah, that's something you want to look at too, because if you're looking to change jobs or it's something that your market is in, say, California, but you're living in, I don't know, New Jersey. This is obviously buying a
Oh.
home there is just not going to make sense. So, this is something that you should probably look at as well. And then your family needs.
Well, I think I see where you're going with that. What your family needs, what space do you truly need for the family dynamics that you look to grow or the ones that you currently have? I do believe there is a misconception at times where, families should, if you have a family and it's, let's say, a family of three or four, even more, that you shouldn't live in an apartment or you shouldn't be renting. And I don't necessarily think that's true. And then
Mhm.
I would say even on the flip side, they like most people were forced, I shouldn't say forced, but most people were thought to think that they should buy a home because they do have a family of a certain size. But again, it all dials down to coming back to what's best for you as
Mhm.
well as your family.
Right. Right, definitely, because there are bigger apartments. It's not like every apartment is a one bedroom situation. So you can have a family in an apartment. Like think of New York. There's plenty
Oh,
of condos and things like that, and so
maybe not New
um
York. New York is very expensive, but anyhow.
well, not price. I'm not thinking of price. I'm just thinking of
I'm
space.
going to live in a box on a corner. But
But
anywho,
yeah. So,
so if I may,
mhm,
one last tip that I would like to give our listeners is to make sure they consult with someone that's in that relative field, a real estate agent or a financial advisor to truly
mhm.
help guide you to make the best decision for you.
Yes. Yes, I think that'll definitely be helpful. So yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, looks like another episode down. I truly hope that you found this information useful and helpful. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe below. I think I'm
Mhm.
now getting it. It's below.
Yeah,
Um, and and let us know, what are your thoughts?
I like that. What are your thoughts? Let us know. We'll see you next time and check out our other videos. And we got a
Abs-
lot more coming.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. And remember to dream big and don't forget the magic of being practical. Until next time, bye.
Bye.